Hello everyone. Richard III, Clarence's Dream. The Critical Sorcerer here, Brian Jennings. This channel exists to discuss the true story of the movie Critic, what actually occurred. I'm the reason that Quentin canceled his film, The Movie Critic, last April, and the two of us have been embroiled in a legendary psychic siege for going on 2 years now. Right? So I'm a writer as well as an actor. Right, the Movie Critic is about a writer. Right, it's a movie about a writer. Right, and so after I didn't bend to his psychic whim at a screening of Jackie Brown at De Niro Con, there's my ticket. Right, he decided that it was better for him psychologically. Right, to show everyone around him that I'm completely insane, so that he doesn't have to. Right, admit that he played Russian roulette with his career, right? Because he wanted me to question him about cinema speculation, right? And when he stuck his nose up at my letter, right, when he turned his back on my letter, I did the same thing. Because he didn't want to say anything to me practically, right? And so I chose my side, right? Like that's my right, right? And if he had paid me $250,000, $1 million, up to $5 million, right, for my scene, or just to be a pain in his ass and said, there's the non-disclosure agreement, you sign this, right, I thought you were cool, you're not cool, then he would be cool. But he's not actually cool. He's an evil, dangerous man who is interested in evil. He's not interested in love. He doesn't see anything that's good in his life, right? And so this channel exists, right, for me to be able to talk about it, right? I've told everyone that's involved, and I'll tell everyone on this channel, that there's a clear path to proving me insane, right? Doesn't matter that he's famous. That doesn't make one fucking difference at all, right? That if I'm insane, right, like if there's no validity in any of my claims, then this conversation that Quentin had with Robert De Niro doesn't involve me either, which I was in the front row of. Right? And I've been upset today, right? Because it's just ugly, right? It's just, right? There's nothing good about what this is now, right? Like, is he shooting The Movie Critic right now, right? Because The Continuing Adventures of Cliff Booth is shooting right now, according to IMDb, right? Right? But I'm an actor as well as a writer. I've written a novelization of my experiences. But the first thing that we're going to talk about is that monologue that I just did from Richard III, right? Clarence's Dream, just before he gets murdered. Right? It's a really famous scene. Right? And so what I'll say is that all of these scenes in the history plays, right? They're all real people, like real instances. I don't know that all the scenes are completely real, right? But all of these characters are all real people, right? And he pulled from a particular writer, Hollinshead, right? However you want to pronounce that, right? And so that monologue in particular, right, is a really beautiful example of Shakespeare using his imagination, right? Because Clarence, according to the record, right, was found in a Malmsey butt, right? And this is what the murderers talk about later in the scene, right? I'll drown thee in the Malmsey butt within, right? That he was drowned, right, in a giant vat of like beer or wine or some such, right? And so Shakespeare, knowing that, right, he writes all these beautiful monologues for Clarence leading up to his actual murder, right? Where he's talking about, oh Lord, methought what pain it was to drown. Of course, there's no record of Clarence saying anything of the kind, right? But Shakespeare is a wonderful writer, probably the finest of all time as far as English is concerned. And so he was familiar with this book, Hollinshed's Chronicles, right? And he used artistic license in the most beautiful, profound way, of course, for Clarence to ruminate in such an abstract, metaphysical way about a dream, right? He has this dream, like, oh, I saw all these dead men, like with gems in their skulls in the ocean, right? That this is, right, that's a proto-Freud, that's a sophisticated psychological nuance, right? In 1600, whenever the play was written, and so I prescribe to a particular philosophy that the writer of the plays was Edward de Vere, right? But you can say that it was the man from Stratford, and that's fine too. But what I'm saying is that whomever wrote it is really it's irrelevant. Like what matters is what's on the page, and that scene in particular is a beautiful example. And if we look to Richard II as another example, that the scene with Brackenbury right before he gets killed, right, like that whole scene, that's like pulled word for word out of Holland's Head, right? The devil take Henry of Lancaster and thee as well, right? It's like something like that. It's like pulled letter for letter, word for word, right? And that the guy who killed Richard II, right? He was crying a lot. He saw Richard kill like 7 people, and he said, "Oh, that was a great nobleman has died," and all these things. Right? So, right? Quentin and I are right here, right? Just right there. Right? Right? And I'm not proud of having to write Westboro Baptist. Doesn't interest me at all. Right? But he didn't really leave me a choice. He kept being evil. And God willing, it's just psychological torture. It was just to traumatize me. Right, which I'll always deny. Again, right, like this is, right, he doesn't have simple honesty, right? And this is the point that I made in my previous video when I said, oh, if he just stays steeped in this bile, if he's just got bullshit bile all the way over his head for the last 20 years of his life, right? Then everything that he's built will come crashing down around him, right? This is the cost, It's not right, like, oh no, it won't. It doesn't work that way, and that's fine, But right, what I'm saying is that he's been lying to everyone around him for a long time, and he got me good. Right? He made me seem insane, right? Made me say awful, hateful things to Ari Emanuel and Mike Simpson, and I don't regret that because they've insulated his evil and said, oh, well, what can we say? Oh, he's the guy that makes our money for us, right? Oh, he's, right, like, oh, this guy, he must be telling the truth. This guy's insane, right? And so now every time Ari Emanuel fucks his fine wife, he sees me. And every time Mike Simpson fucks a 12-year-old boy in Tijuana, he sees me. Right? And so I don't regret that. But it never had to come to this. That's my point. Right? I'm not interested in seducing anyone's wife with my mind. Right? Right? The point that I'm making right now, right, is that the book, which I'm going to start reading on soon, is called Building a Coven. Right? As in a witch's coven, right? And so the things that people refer to as psychic, clairvoyant, right, telepathic, thaumaturgic, psychokinesis, etc., all these terms, right? That they're the same terms that people used to refer to as magic and sorcery in centuries past. They're not similar things, that they're the exact same thing. This logic is unequivocal, right? And so, right, Quentin has entered into a covenant, right, with the people around him to compel me to blow my brains out, right, hoping that I would walk out into traffic and get run over by an 18-wheeler, right, all these things, right, and now that he's failed in his bullshit subtlety ploy, right, with emotions and the heart, right, he's entered into palpable black magic evil, right, which I can do too. Anyone can do. This isn't, right, it's easy. He stole it from me, right, and so in that way, right, his design was always to traumatize me, right, and everyone who knows anything about anything, right? Unless they're all just complete fucking degenerates, right? And this ain't fucking Hollywood types that we're talking about here. This is Dr. David Berlinski from the Discovery Institute, author of The Devil's Delusion, author of Science After Babel, right? That this is the jam band Fish, right? Trey Anastasio, right? And they both have said in their own way, right, that the things that Quentin touches on must be true in their own way, right? Trey, like, of course, Fish has a really famous song called Divided Sky, and CBS or someone was interviewing him however long ago, and they said, you have this really famous pause, and now everyone goes crazy at the pause, and they were talking about Divided Sky, and so in the 90s, everyone was quiet during the pause, right, which they typically played at sunset, right, with the shifting light, right, Goethe's color wheel, right? But now, in the last like 10 years, right, everyone started going crazy during the pause. And so what Trey said, right, and I quote, I had the thought that I was playing the note, right? So he has the thought that he's playing the note, 20,000 people go crazy. That's the power, right? Quentin has a thought, right, that he wants me to question him about cinema speculation. Right? And then he has another thought, right? That he has a daughter who's an adult who loves me, right? And then he has another thought, right? That the Discovery Institute wants me to play Hamlet, and this girl I know in Seattle named Hannah, she's Anna in the novel, that she loves me, right? And then he has another thought, right? That Trey Anastasio wants to help me play Hamlet, and his daughter Eliza wants to play Ophelia to my Hamlet, right? And then, right, inevitably, right, his daughter is a prostitute who gets pissed on for $500 an hour. And that's Allie Jean _3 or 4 on Instagram. You want to ask her if you can piss on her for $500 an hour? Pretty funny to me, right? But my point is that when I turned it all on him, inevitably he said, no, this isn't, like, no, there's no daughter. It's all bullshit. Right? You see the board, right? And it's all here in this novel, right? So it's all the same tactics, right? It's like, oh, I'm sending out, right, a thought force, right? Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma. A thought is a force, and philosophy should be an energy whose effects and ends should be towards the amelioration of mankind, right? And so this is my point when I say that he abuses wisdom, right? That he uses wisdom to manipulate people's minds, right? To manipulate the women in his life, right? To do fucked up, depraved shit, right? This is my point. And so we're barreling towards completion with regards to the novel, right? That there's only however many pages left.